Hello. Hi, everybody. Angela here, talking to you from my home in West London. I hope you can all hear me. Jane, can you hear me? I have Jane Turner joining us. There she is. Hi,
hello.
Jane. How are you?
Fantastic, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. So we're streaming live and we're going to have a chat today about visualization and visioning, and I'm really happy that you've joined us, Jane, because you told me a story about this a little while. Just put you into gallery so I can see you properly. You told me a story about how you'd done some vision work and how that had worked out from your perspective. Some fascinating stories, and I just thought sometimes visioning can sound a bit sort of out there. We don't really understand it. It can sound to those very methodical and logical minds that there's no substance to it. But I think during our chat, what we can demonstrate is there actually is, and it is very worthwhile to do it. For those of you who don't know me, you've maybe just come across this ad for the first time. I run a program called Your Body Means Business, and I have very successful women join that program, and men as well, and it goes over sort of 13-week seasons where we really tackle things to do with body and mindset, transforming the body, upgrading the mindset. And in turn, once you have those two foundations in place, it really helps you tackle your business. I've certainly experienced that myself. And when Jane joined one of our seasons, she already was a very successful businesswoman, in business for sort of 20 years, and has done some great things with her business. But you wanted to also learn some more about the body and strengthen your body and also your mindset. And what I've seen with you, Jane, is that not only have you been very successful in your business and continue to be so, but also you've once you put your mind to it, you did some really brilliant things as well with your body. And I think both of us are testament to the fact it doesn't matter when you start things like weight training, you can do it. Even when you're approaching 50, as in your case, or mid 50s in mine, and still transform your body. So it's not just reserved for the young, and in fact we feel very young both ourselves as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of visioning, if we sort of start off, I'll just do a quick definition and you can maybe then tell us a little bit about your experiences of it. But one of the things that I always say is, whatever you're thinking about on a regular basis tends to be what you experience in your life. And there is another saying which I think maybe people are more familiar with, which is you get what you focus on. And I always talk about the red car syndrome. If you buy a red car, you suddenly see red cars everywhere. You buy a particular dress, you suddenly see that dress everywhere. So, and the reason for that is that we've got this part of our brain called the reticular activating system, which sort of looks for things that we're thinking about. And so therefore, I suppose the theory goes that if you are very mindful about the vision that you're trying to create, you're more likely to achieve it. And what we've done for many years in my business is we've helped people who are starting their career to do just that. We've really had fun with it. We've got people to say, okay, in 5 years' time, how do you want your life to be? What do you actually see in the future? And it's not like a crystal ball. It's more about, what would you like and what can you really imagine? And that is, what do you look like? Who are you with? Where do you live? What work are you doing? Where do you go on holiday? Who are your friends? And things like that. And it really inspires people when they get that clarity of vision to then do the necessary things to achieve it. And so one of the things that we do on the program, and that you've done very successfully in your past as well, Jane, is to start with that visioning. So tell us a little bit about, how you've worked with vision boards and, vision journals and so on in the past. Give us an introduction, first of all.
Okay, well, first of all, I think everybody does it naturally anyway, from being a child, sort of where you have no limitations, you get rid of any limitations. And I think things like fear, doubt, limitations are the biggest things that hold people back. I suppose in the business that I work in, I initially started doing things before I learned about it, for example, there was a holiday incentive that they introduced when I was quite new with the company I was involved with, and that was an added bonus on top of what I was earning. So I actually went out to travel agents and what have you. I knew it was going to be a cruise, so I got pictures of cruise ships and what have you, and put them all in strategic places so that I was always looking at them. And I think I believe there's something greater out there than us, and I think I know a lot of close family members or whatever that perhaps didn't believe in, you know, sort of, that they thought I'd got a bit loopy, you know, sort of this wishful thinking and what have you. But I do think that visioning is a bit like the same as the power of, say, electricity. We don't question that, but it works. You press a light switch and that electricity comes through, you turn on a tap and you get running water. And it's the same sort of process, really, because when I think back, they actually drew me to do the right things to actually attain that cruise. And what was quite interesting, the company I'm involved with has since done many incentives, produced many incentives, but that was the first incentive that they did. And the prize was actually initially a trip on the QE2, which is the most prestigious cruise ship, you know, in the world. But it was in December around the Channel Islands. So I knew it was going to be cold, but they announced that the top 50 partners that actually, it was done on a point system based on our activity and what have you. The top 50 would actually go on a cruise around the Caribbean. And I'm more a fair weather person straight away. And I was quite new to the company. There were people doing a lot better than me. But because I focused on what I wanted, I then naturally started taking the right steps to achieve that. And I did achieve that. Yeah. So it was, you know, that starting point.
And I think as well, because we'll talk about the steps of visioning, but to finish that story off, because I was fascinated when you told me about it, although you did all the right steps to get there, there was that moment, wasn't there, where you said that you found yourself in the event where they were announcing who the winner was, and you'd actually sort of played this in your mind. Tell us that bit of the story, because that's amazing.
Well, that's actually a totally different story, and this is something else that I achieved. And I believe that visioning is on two levels. And it's all to do with the vibration that we're in. So the more that we're focused on, you know, sort of gratitude and, you know, sort of the higher level things rather than the fear and the doubt, we can attract more. And it's all to do with your level of vibration. And so this other story was more, not so much about what I did, but, well, I suppose it is what I did, really, because there's still steps to when you're attracting things, good things to you. And one of the things is to, a bit like athletes do, always start with that end in mind, you know, whatever it is that you want, and act as if and expect that you've already got it. So there's no doubt that you've already got it. And they had an incentive where every time you introduced a new client to the company, you were entered into a prize draw. And at the annual conference, that draw for the big prizes was going to be made. And I remember it was about a 2-hour drive to where the conference was. And I spent the whole journey talking to my husband about the first prize as if we'd already won it. And we'd recently read a book called The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clayson. And within that book, it said about, you know, any extra money, income that you get, it said, you know, about invest 10%, etc. And it said about tithing 10%. And so I started talking to Darren, my husband, about what are we going to do with that 10%, because it's a lot of money. You know, who was going to benefit? So we were actually debating who was going to get that 10%. So it was bizarre, because I then started to visualising while we were in the audience, because the draw took place throughout the day for the smaller prizes first, and the financial director had the same tonality every time he pulled out the winning ticket, and he read it in the same order. So he read our sort of ID number, or our partner number, which was a 6-digit number, and then our name. So in my head, I just spent the whole time visualizing and feeling, and I brought emotion to it, which emotion is a big thing as well. And I don't know how or why it works. I still don't know, but I don't know how electricity works. And yet my lights go on when I press the button. But when it was the first prize and they brought the big cardboard checks onto the stage and the name was blank, I then started looking at that as he was drawing it, not only visualizing him calling out my number and then my name, but also visualizing my name written on the check. And when he got to the 4th digit of the ID number, which obviously were all my digits because I did win that amount, or me and my husband did it, but before he got out of his seat, I was on that stage because I just knew I won, and I just leapt up. So yes, that was.
We've got a lovely photo of that moment as well, and I was so fascinated when you told me that, because it just, in fact, it sort of makes me go goosebumpy, because you had, you were sitting in that audience and you were playing it over and over in your mind, and you sort of knew almost without doubt that it was going to be you, and you knew how it was going to happen and what was going to be said, and you saw yourself jumping up on the stage, and it all just sort of played out as you'd seen it. And that reminds me of when I was a really small child, where I used to believe that if you wish for something hard enough, it's going to happen. So I remember as being a really small child, really, really wishing, that I would be picked for a team, or, that I would pass a particular exam or whatever it was. And then when this used to happen, when I get the result, I think, wow, all this wishing, it really helps, And then as I got a bit older, I started, in fact, my first set of goals were documented in 1987. And they were just wishes at the time. I wish for blah, blah, blah. And I'd written all these things down in 1987. And then as the years progressed, for me, as I started to learn more about the power of goal setting, as well as manifestation. So one is very logical. The other is a bit like you said, just having a belief that if you focus on something, you're going to draw these things towards you. So as I learned about these two things a bit more, I started to become a bit more specific. And I think that's the thing, is that, you can sort of just have a set of goals. I want more money, or, I want to create a big business, or I want a particular type of house. But if you get really, really specific, then number one, it makes you sort out what you really do want versus what you don't. And that's I think that's point number one in this whole thing about vision, is if you've got to set aside the time to actually sit there, first of all, and decide what it is that you truly want. Because if you're not that fast, you can get distracted and you won't really bring emotion to it, as you described. And then the second thing is to be very, very specific. Once you know roughly what you want, someone was saying about it the other day that they wanted a particular house, but then they started to describe the fact that they wanted a vaulted ceiling and, a particular view and things like that. And with you just described how you saw your name on this check and what you were going to literally do with this check, the 10% that you were going to donate. So being really clear about what you want is and very specific, I think, is number one. The second thing that I wanted to talk about as well was the why. Be it getting emotion behind it, because when you're saying that you're bringing emotion to it, any sort of tips on that? Because you mentioned a little bit about it, about the 10% that you could give, and you've been debating that with your husband. But the why, I think, could be a real driver, because we might want something, but if once the going gets tough and you have to do certain things to achieve it, if your why is not strong enough, you can get distracted, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. And actually around that time, I mean, that was 13 years ago that we got that check. And we'd had a run of things earlier that year that had occurred, which my husband managed to flip a quad bike when we were at Centre Parks, right, and broke his leg in 5 places. So he was, sort of in quite a bad way. But interestingly, and again, this comes back to the manifestation side, things like his extra income, his overtime stopped. He went down to half pay after 6 months and things like that. So you know, sort of there was an area where our income slowed down, if you like, or his side of income. But, you know, by this time we'd been introduced to The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, is it? And he actually asked me to bring in the book, and he was focusing on the health side of it a lot. And interestingly, both the main doctors and his work doctors said it would take 18 months for him to heal, and because his main bone wasn't, you know, sort of needed to grow and all the rest of it. And long story short, he actually recovered in just under 9 months, so it was less than half the time. And he was actually a lot fitter than he was before the accident.
Yeah.
You know, and again, that was I suppose visioning it again came into that, because from his aspect, he was you know, we were just not accepting what was being told and just focusing on no, we're going to make this happen. And we are big believers in, I mean, okay, you can't stop things like pandemics and things like that. You know, there will always be things in the outside environment that are going on that are beyond your control. But there are a lot of things that are in your control that can lead you to what you want.
Yeah. And I think as well, you know, when you've got a very strong why, as you had there with him, you know, needing to get fit, but also the who you're doing this for as well, because very often, you know, we personally might want to achieve something, and it is lovely to achieve things for ourselves as individuals, but it's so much more powerful, isn't it, when you're trying to achieve it for a bit of a wider impact. And that might be a really big group, or it might just be someone else. It might be you're doing it, you know, for your children, your immediate family, your husband, but identifying not just what you want, but, you know, who is going to be impacted by it, and that sort of connected with the why is also really, really important. And some of the things that I've done where I've had a bigger impact have been because I've been thinking about that sort of that wider picture. And with the world sort of going so global now, you know, we're not sort of local anymore. The minute something happens sort of across the world, we know about it as well. You know, our potential to impact more people with something that we do, even though it might be very, very hard work and very difficult to achieve, the impact could be so much wider. So the why and the who, I think, are really important in visioning as well. It's not necessarily just for us. It could be, you know, for what we are able to do once we've achieved this thing, whatever it is, whether that's a level of fitness, mindset, or, you know, a business that achieves a certain level. The other thing that is important with visioning is when, you know, because we talk about what and why and who for, but then the when, you know, how specific are we going to be about the when we create this vision? So with you, when you had your couple of examples there, have you got any other examples where you've been very, okay, by such and such a date, this is what I want to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, going back to touching back on the why for a second, you know, I've got 2 children, and they have been probably over the past 20 years a massive why for me.
Yeah.
And I think my life really so far has gone in sort of 3 stages, and I'm really excited because I feel like I'm coming into a new phase, and hence, you know, sort of me being attracted to the YBMB, and I'm really excited about the journey that's now taking me on. Yeah. But, you know, if I go back to, say, when I was at school, sort of school age, you know, I came from a very loving family, but they didn't, you know, there was no money. You know, we did struggle financially. My parents always worked, but, you know, the low paid jobs, lived on a council estate. And growing up, I passed my 11 plus. I went to a girls' grammar school, and I was the only girl from that, or only pupil from that type of background. Everyone else were from sort of more middle and upper class is probably the standard. Now, there was 2 ways I could have gone there, you know, and you know, everything in life we have choices about, and I could have got very bitter and very resentful about the fact that, you know, I didn't have all these things, you know, at times I had to have free school dinners and things like that. And but I actually used it as a springboard, really, and as a form of inspiration that I want to have what you've got. I want to be like you. And so I believe that whatever our story, our beginning story is, we can always change that further down the line. And I think that visioning helps massively, because that's seeing how, like you said, how you want your life, and then your goals that you set are your building blocks, if you like, towards that vision, and you're attaching time scales on that. So so that was a starting point, which then attracted me to the company that I'm now involved with, that's been my vehicle, if you like, to enable me to build my finances with my husband, and to be able to give to our children the things that to give them the financial security that perhaps I didn't have so much of.
And it goes full circle like that then.
Yeah. And also to not only, it's been great actually, because I've not only been able to give them things, sort of life experiences and things like that, which we've enjoyed as a family, but the personal development side of it that comes along with it, I've been able to give that to my children as well, and give them that belief and that confidence that, Roger Bannister is my idol, if you like, as far as, sort of that epitome of anything is possible.
Yeah.
And one deadline example that I would give is a vision that I helped my son to achieve, or me and my husband helped my son to achieve, when he was 10 years old. And he used to go to taekwondo twice a week, and not up on the gradings, but he was on the belt just below black belt. So his next grade was going to be for his black belt, and he was actually 9.5, and he asked his tutors sort of when he could go for his black belt grading, and they said that it wouldn't be on the next one in 9 months' time, it would be 18 months away. So he actually went to my husband Darren and said, I've been told that it's going to be 18 months, but I want to do it in 9. How can I do it? And again, it's weird, because we learn things, we do things sometimes for a period of time, and actually doing the YBMB has brought me back to reminding me of the things that I did worked well, and then I just stopped doing them, like asking those empowering questions. How can I do this? What do I need to do? So we sat down and worked out a plan with him that in effect what he had to do was double his effort to do it in half the time. And we spoke to his tutors. We lived 20 minutes away from his class, so we had to commit as well in time and what have you, to get him there, to double the amount of classes to achieve it. And then we used to get him to watch motivational videos in the morning while he was eating his breakfast. And I know that probably sounds a little bit sad, but it worked, because it built his mindset, and he achieved it. He was just turned 10 when he achieved black belt, so.
A fabulous example of timing, but I think such a key aspect of that story is that you asked the right question. And in a minute, I want to come on to sort of strategies and the how, but, asking that right question, well, how could it be done in 9 months? Then starts you on a path of activity, which is going to make that come true. And, the answers didn't really matter, because your answers were, you're going to commit by doing the driving, he's going to do motivational videos, and whatever the other hows were, it's almost like they're sort of secondary. And I really wanted to lead on to that point, if that's okay, is about the hows now, because so many people, myself, I'm sure you've experienced this, Jane, as well, and so many people that I come into contact with, when they've got when they have a goal and they want to achieve something, they feel that they plateau and they're banging their head against a brick wall, because they're not achieving it as quickly as they want to. And the reason very often is that they have gone straight into the strategies, they've gone straight into the how. And it's not that they've not worked all the hours that God sends, it's not that they've worked really, really hard, it's not that they're not intelligent, but they're strategy. They're just doing. And they've not actually done you know, the other 80% of it, which is the things that we've mentioned, which is, you know, getting really clear on the vision, you know, identifying very specifically what that consists of, deciding on, you know, the why, deciding on the who it's going to impact, and then deciding on the timescale as well. And then once you've got all of that, then you have at your, you know, at your disposal a range of strategies, as you've just said. And if those ones had not worked and maybe you'd gone like 2 or 3 months in of the 9, you still would have had time, because you were asking the right questions and you've done all the pre-thinking, to say, okay, well, what other strategies? Let's try something else. And that's the sort of the final part of the visioning, I think, is that, you know, once you've done the 80% of the steps that we've just described, and we actually could put this on the notes with this post, that final one of strategies is needs to be tagged onto the end of it, periodic measuring. So you implement those strategies, and then you say, well, is this getting him closer to the black belt? Yes, it is, great, carry on. Or no, it's not, right, let's try some other strategies then. But always keeping in mind the vision. Where I wanted to, we could talk about this for hours, but where I wanted to sort of go with it next is, we've gone through the steps of visioning, but physically, you know, where do you put this vision? Because there are some ways of doing it. Some people use vision boards, others use journals. What do you use?
I use a mixture of the two, really. I do like visuals. So, you know, I'll have visuals on my computer, on my phone, etc. I have made vision boards in the past. In fact, a vision board that I did in 2013, where, you know, you're just cutting out of magazines and that. I had no interest in getting a dog at that point. But in one of the magazines, I saw this little cute little black Cocker Spaniel puppy. And I put that on there and thought nothing of it. And this was in the January, February time. And then in November, my daughter's godmother wanted to buy her a puppy for her sort of joint birthday and Christmas. And I was like, oh, no. And my daughter told her how much she wanted a dog and that I'd been saying no. So in the end, it was like, I found one, go and have a look at it. And when I went and looked, it was the same one as the one on the vision board. So again, you know, sort of that, sorry that I threw another story in there, but, you know, that just shows how it brings it to you. But also journaling as well, you know, and when I'm writing my vision, whenever I'm doing a written vision of what I want or what I want to achieve, I always write it in the present tense. I can't remember at what point or who taught me that, but I know present tense is very important, and you write it as if you've received it, and that feeling of gratitude. I think gratitude has to be a massive part of it. I think what we tend to do is, and I know I was guilty of that at one stage, I used to be really impatient, and you have to have patience with it as well, because sometimes things come together immediately, but then other times, like you said, you know, you have to, if you're not doing that plan, do review sort of on a regular basis, you don't realise that you've gone off track even. But if you're regularly doing that, it's a bit like an aeroplane, you know, an aeroplane, say, flying from London to Los Angeles. It's going at like point of a degree off course all the time, and the pilot is constantly having to pull it back on course. And that's really what we have to do with our goals.
Yeah, and a journal is so useful for that, because a vision board gives you just a constant reminder throughout the day whenever you pop into that area where the vision board is. But having a journal is well, it's a reminder. It gives you structure to your day. It allows you to build on that vision, because you might tweak it and change it and add to it. But also, if your vision consists of phrases such as I am, I have, I do. And just to finish off as well about the vision, it's not just about things. It's about, you know, when I always say, when we're actually documenting this vision of ourselves, it will be describing what we look like, how we're feeling, what our key personalities are that we're actually bringing to bear, because we've all got a whole range of empowering and disempowering personalities, ranging from, you know, determination and positivity through to maybe guilt and you know, regret. So, you know, when you're actually documenting your vision about yourself, you would be creating your identity as well, you know, talking about the language that you use, and just really bringing it to life. So every time you look at that every day, you inch closer and closer to it because you're constantly reading it without even knowing it. So then, you know, eventually, as you said, just that final point is that sometimes visions come true in ways that you never would have imagined. So, you know, you want something and you think it's going to happen a certain way, and then all of a sudden it happens, definitely not in the way you expected, but you know, it has happened. And so that other saying of, you know, be careful what you wish for is a really important one, because this stuff's powerful. When you really focus on it, when you document it properly and in detail, then you really can achieve whatever it is you want, whether it is the little dog, whether it is, you know, to empower your child to get a black belt at the age of 10, or a particular house, or your name on a check, or a big prize, you know, I mean, and so much more. If you decide that you want to impact people globally, then go for it, because, you know, this is an exponential world now, and you can have that impact on such a big scale if you choose to, and you have to start with visioning. So as I say, we could talk about this so much more, and I just wanted to say to anybody listening that if you are interested in hearing more about the YBMB program and, you know, all of this type of stuff, you know, we've only just touched on one component of, I think it's something like 37 different projects that we cover, you know, but if you're interested, then there is a link you'll see with this recording. You can click on it and you can come to a webinar, a live webinar that I do. I think I'm doing it this Sunday, but you'll see on the link. And then if you want to get involved in the YBMB program, as Jane has, then you know, we can tell you how to do that. But Jane, it's been a pleasure to work with you. We're still working together. It's been wonderful to sort of learn from your experiences as well. And I wanted to bring you on today to talk about visioning, because I know that you know, you walk the walk, and you make it work for you every day. So well done, you.
Thank you. It's been a privilege. Thanks a lot.
No, I love to talk to you. Bye bye. Thanks a lot.